10 days ago, Woodstock Willie spoke, and the message is shocking. The Illinois weather prognosticating rodent has indicated that we will indeed be having 6 more weeks of winter. I may be new to the region, but I feel pretty confident that winter has rarely been done here before April. Given the ease of that initial prediction, I think it's fair to ask follow-up questions. Will it be more of this mid-Atlantic winter that I didn't really like very much when I lived there? Will it ever snow enough to fully cover my messy yard? I need a more detailed forecast. And I think maybe this rodent has as good a chance as anyone, given the winter that we've had so far. The chipmunks in my yard are pretty seasonal, and I haven't seen them for quite a while. The kid in me has a sort of a vision of them in their little underground dens. I know exactly where they are, by the way. Snuggled up with all of the bird seed and peanuts that they gathered, burrowed into a bed of single socks and found gloves. And then, because I'm all about a cozy, snuggly picture, I imagine them occasionally waking up a little, doing a little reading, sharing a cup of tea, maybe some knitting. What better than to make things that keep you warm and keep your little bitty paw fingers moving when it's so cold, even when you feel like hibernating. And that's the kind of image that I have in mind when I think about the winter activity that I want to commit to for whatever remains of this tempestuous season, the kind of winter that I think I really need. Winter can be an introvert's dream, especially where I grew up, where nobody can drive in snow and the world just sort of folds in on itself in inclement weather. Grab a book, make some hot chocolate, turn the ringer off on the phone, grab a throw blanket, warm socks, sweats, you get the feeling. But I feel like my usual winter withdrawal from the world this year is weird. Maybe it's the time spent in lockdown, which was kind of long for my family. And maybe I've had enough of my own company, as good as it is. Maybe it's just that I'm not sure our interdependent web can be left on its own right now. I think of Tyree Nichols. I think of so many others impacted by police violence. I think about addiction. I think about polarization. I think about racial violence. I think about gun violence. It's messy in there. I think about the increasing incidence of anti-Semitism. And I feel like our social safety net and everything else that's supposed to hold us together is failing a bit. I feel like our web is more than a little tattered. We're in there, whether we mean to be or not. There's no choice. It's done. With all of the other living things on the planet, some of whom might be perfectly happy to opt out of our web as well. But I'm not sure we can just coast there. I'm not sure we can just be there, even for one more month. So I find myself reaching for a different kind of winter experience, not more relative isolation, not another month of saying no quite so frequently, not another winter of turning endlessly inward, investigating myself and my decisions, even if it's for the better. Not another month buffered, cocooned, wrapped in bubble wrap. I don't think I can take it. I just don't think I can take it. And maybe it's just me. Rather than turning inward, though, maybe it's a time when it's more important to turn our gaze towards others. Not just in the way of being kind or welcoming or caring. Y'all are pretty good at that already. I know firsthand. I'm talking about something deeper than that. It's about making the collective whole. It's about acknowledging our place in spirit. It's about recognizing that just as we need others, others need just our presence to experience all that the world is. In my lifelong search for a spirituality that felt right to me, I always was more attracted to what I think of as kind of a distributed deity. God in pieces. I always struggled with the concept of a God that was separate from living things, watching or acting in response to prayer and supplication. But when I began to think of God, the holy, great love, the collective, I'm happy to switch out words, as something in every one of us, it shifted my thinking radically and simultaneously made religion more accessible to me. It lined up with my sense of holy experiences in group endeavors, in choirs, in plays, even in rock bands, and in the Canadian wilderness, surrounded by evergreens, chipmunks, and the occasional bear. It also aligned with my sense that asking God to magically fix the problems of the world, particularly those that we've created, was something of a lost cause, which is not to be taken as a knock on prayer of any kind. I just didn't think the request met on demand model was accurate. I had a sense that if God or spirit or love or the great compassion were to intervene, it would be through the hands, the minds, the effort of living beings around me. I had a sense that I'd not been able to articulate that the living community, the interdependent web in the language of our principles, actually makes God. I don't mean that in some sort of philosophical view of the role of religion in society. I'm talking about component pieces, making a sacred whole like a puzzle. Which is why I'm so worried about the idea of withdrawing, even for another month this winter. I see that the web is weaker. I see trouble. And here we are in the season when so many of us are quite naturally inclined to tag out for a few months. So I'm here to ask you to consider some worthy winter work. I'm here to ask you to consciously weave the web of our interdependent existence. I'm asking you to be countercultural. Y'all usually like that. Our culture of rugged individualism lets us tune out a great deal of that which might interfere with our individual peace and tranquility. It can encourage us to believe that any successes that we might have are a direct result of our individual effort. It can also lead us to believe that those who are not succeeding in our neighborhoods, in our society, are not working hard enough or are undeserving in some way that we haven't yet identified. It can lead us to question the experiences of other folks because they don't match our own. Our individualistic culture can limit our perception of the consequences of our choices. Our vision is narrow. We're not accustomed to a wider view. It's a cultural thing. It's not your fault, and it doesn't mean you're selfish. I just thought I'd throw that in. Sociologists who study individualism have found that we in the US, the #1 individualistic culture, we win, tend to view relationships as transient, temporary, fleeting. It may not feel natural for us to actively nurture interdependence. Most of us need practice actively weaving the web. We hold conflicting values and ideas that make it easy to believe in the idea of building beloved community while not being confronted with the consequences of the failure of doing it. We can participate in the digital collective without providing real mutual aid. We can witness and comment and feel that we have done something. But the larger world and our UU faith calls us to greater action and deeper interaction, less transient relationship, more permanent commitment. As I was chewing on this under my throw blanket, reading the New York Times, you got me, I stumbled onto a series that purported to offer 7 days to happiness. Okay, I'll bite. 7 days, sounds good. What's interesting about this series is that to follow the advice provided, a person must complete 7 tasks that involve explicitly and intentionally increasing our interactions with other people. Some of those suggestions are on the light side, like the suggestion to engage in small talk as you move through your day. Others are a heavier lift, like the one to either write a living eulogy or a carefully thought out thank you to someone who's made a big difference in your life. Others include saying yes and resisting the urge to cancel plans with other humans and to nurture friendships at work. Varying levels of complexity, varying levels of effort, but all designed to improve our relationships with other human beings. So why did they title this series the 7-Day Happiness Challenge? It's pretty simple. Robert Waldinger, researcher, the question of what constitutes the good life is not a hypothetical. He directs the Harvard Study of Adult Development, which for more than 80 years, so I'm assuming it preceded Dr. Waldinger, has followed the lives of 724 participants and more than 1,300 of their descendants. When it comes to understanding human flourishing, Waldinger has the receipts. He's got a book called The Good Life, Lessons from the World's Longest Scientific Study of Happiness. And his research highlights humanity's ability to adapt in the face of obstacles beyond our control, which is most of them, by the way. He subscribes to mindfulness teacher and author Jon Kabat-Zinn's metaphor describing the struggles of life as waves in the ocean. You can't stop the waves, but you can learn to surf. Often the way we adapt is through our connections with other people, Waldinger says. When we find creative ways to reach out to friends, family, coworkers, or even strangers, we not only find short-term relief, like it feels good, we engage in work that has long-term benefits. He's got quantitative and qualitative evidentiary fingers pointed directly at the interdependent web as our greatest source of a good life. My sense of distributed divinity screeches and flaps its hands. It gets pretty excited about that. God, spirit of life, the holy, the sacred, the good life are accessible through relationship. Relationship with one another, relationship with the earth and its residents, reflective relationships with ourselves, the interdependent web of all existence. We are inextricably tied in that network of mutuality that the good Reverend Dr. King pointed to. But existing in that web, acknowledging its fundamental existence, is insufficient. We must tend to it. We must tend to it for reasons that resonate with our values around equality and justice, We must tend to it for Tyree Nichols and so many others. We must tend to it for reasons that reflect our understanding of science and the ecological peril that we face. We must also tend to the web because the changes that we would have to make in order to address those long-standing serious issues require us to work together and to trust one another. We must actually be in relationship, not just deposited on the web, reacting to our naturally derived connections. We have to be in it, working at it, repairing it, building it anew as needs become more clear. Relationships require tending, says Waldinger, and people who have the strongest relationships are proactive, reaching out rather than just assuming that friendships are going to take care of themselves. We must build networks of support and mutual aid, communal care and commonality. We must bring our disparate divinity, each piece together to create God and the good life. And to do that, we must grow our muscles for trust and engagement, even in the face of conflict. And all of that requires practice, especially after keeping to ourselves for a couple of years. It's still winter, so I'm not saying we should have a garden party or anything. I'm suggesting political action because I'm always suggesting political action, but I'm simultaneously suggesting something quieter. I'm suggesting winter weaving of the web with my favorite of the suggestions dropped by the New York Times, the 8-minute phone call. The 8-minute phone call is short enough that most folks have to admit they can fit it into their schedules. And it's long enough, believe it or not, to actually talk about real things. It provides both parties with the emotionally regulating experience of hearing the voice of someone they care about. Yes, that's a real thing. And it strengthens the bond, especially if in minute 7 you turn your attention to scheduling the next call. Weaving, one thread at a time. This is not the madcap social frenzy of summer fireworks and cookouts, but the quieter, deeper, more personal fabric art of strong and enduring community. I challenge you to weave with me 8 holy minutes at a time. May we all see the fruits of that labor come spring. With that in mind, I would ask that you rise in body or spirit to join me in singing hymn number 118,